China is an ally of Russia. Russia is the dominant partner, so we deal with Russia rather than with China. When the Prophet ﷺ told us that you will make an alliance with Rome, the implication is that the Russian-led alliance will not submit to Dajjal eventually. That the Russian-led alliance therefore would not submit to Israel as the ruling state. Russia will not bend her knee to Israel, and therefore China also will not bend her knee to Israel. The implication is that there is going to be therefore rivalry between the two. The Zionist alliance, the Anglo-American Israeli alliance on the one hand, and the Russian-led alliance on the other. This is eventually going to lead to nuclear war, because Russia will not submit to Israel. But they, on the other hand, the Zionists, are pursuing a pig-headed obsession to rule the world, and therefore to rule over Russia and China as well. They simply cannot get out of that obsession. And so we are heading towards nuclear war. And in nuclear war, it is the cities which are going to be first destroyed. Those who live in the cities are going to be incinerated. I was of the opinion that perhaps that nuclear war is about 20 or 25 years away from now. I am afraid I have bad news. I think I'm wrong. Yes, I think I'm wrong. I believe that the nuclear war is sooner rather than later. Why? I believe that Israel does not mind at all provoking nuclear war. No, she doesn't mind. If nuclear war will get rid of millions and billions of people and bring about a substantial reduction in the world population. Amongst those that Israel would like to see eliminated are Arabs. But the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ is that the Arabs are going to be wiped out by plague. There's an essay on my website on swine flu plague. Please read that essay because the relevant hadith are in that essay. The Arabs are going to be wiped out by plague. You are most vulnerable if you are in the cities. I think that wiping out of the Arabs by plague is going to be sometime within the next 5 years. I see no reason why. I see absolutely no reason why I should not offer an opinion about a time frame, particularly when I emphasize that I can be wrong. When I offer an opinion concerning time frame, at least I force you to think that we are not 500 years away from it. So why the objections? If you are in the cities of the Arab world, if you are in Cairo, you are most vulnerable when the plague attack hits. And so if you move out of the cities into the remote countryside, there is more security for you. But I want to direct attention to the ayah which is in Surah Al-Isra, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks, and He says, بَعْدَ أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ وَإِن مِّن قَرْيَةٍ إِلَّا نَحْنُ مُهْلِكُوهَا قَبْلَ يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ أَوْ مُعَذِّبُوهَا عَذَابًا شَدِيدًا كَانَ ذَلِكَ فِي الْكِتَابِ مَسْطُورًا. And not a single town or city will escape. They're all going to be destroyed. Or punish those which escape destruction would be punished with terrible punishment. And so that nuclear warfare that's coming perhaps is the means through which this destruction will take place. And Russia is not going to bow to Israel, and as a consequence, Russia is going to respond with nuclear weapons when attacked. I believe that's the role that Russia has to play. I can be wrong. Remember that, I can be wrong. I believe that they're going to be phasing out paper money, because paper money has already done the job it was designed to do, meaning to rip off mankind and reduce part of mankind, particularly the world of Islam, to poverty and destitution, and bring about a massive transfer of wealth, an unjust transfer of wealth from the masses around the world, the non-European masses, to Europe, to those who gave us the world of paper money. And this is going to be beneficial, of course, to Israel. But the banking system will operate more efficiently. The banking system will be able to take better control of the world and of governments in the world if all of money in the money system of the world becomes electronic money. And therefore I believe the sterling pound, the paper sterling pound, has a very insignificant future ahead of it, and that it is the electronic pound, or perhaps it's going to be one world currency. They don't need all of these currencies. There's going to be one world currency, like there's going to be one world government. It is the electronic money which will take over from the paper money. My last comment is, what will Allah do to a people who live in wonderland, who are sleeping in a world of slumber and bliss, just going to the masjid and going back home, going to the masjid and going back home, when the masjid itself is built with money that is paper money, that is riba? Will Allah accept salat in a building built with riba money and declared to be a masjid? Next question, please. I would leave Britain and get out of Britain without regard for consequences, because my first duty is not to my husband, not to my children, and not to my parents. My first duty is to Allah and to His Messenger. When I show backbone made out of steel, and I leave and I go to a place of greater security and safety, and this is called hijrah, I make hijrah, then Allah in His kindness can open the doors of mercy to me, and my children may eventually join me, and then my husband himself may have a change of his heart and join me. But if I remain where I am, nothing will change. Surely Allah does not change the condition of a people until they, the people, using Allah's guidance, take the initiative to change their own condition. That's my answer. Yes, I totally agree with that comment. I totally agree with it. I would like now to further elaborate on that hadith. The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, that the river Euphrates will uncover a mountain of gold. If you are persuaded that it is a mountain of the metal which is going to come, because the Aslaf never spoke about anything other than a literal interpretation. They never understood it other than literally. Oh, that's the evidence you say there is. Then you are entitled to remain for that mountain of gold, as you are entitled to remain for the flying donkey. However, we look at it differently, and we are entitled to the freedom to do it. We consider this to be religious symbolism. You're free to differ with us. Why the boxing gloves over this issue? We say that it's not a mountain of gold, it's a black gold. And that black gold, the oil has already functioned and has already been functioning as gold to keep the US dollar alive and flying high. But he went on to say that mankind will fight over that gold, and 99 out of every 100 will die. But he also said that the believers should not touch that gold. If our interpretation is correct, the answer is that the believers should not touch that oil. And we are about to understand why he said that. Because the oil is a rope around your neck. They have given us that oil as the oil with which our transportation operates now. We don't use horses anymore, and donkeys and mules that Allah gave us, and it's in the Quran. Allah speaks about it in the Quran, but we've abandoned what Allah gave us. And we now use mechanized transport which run on oil, and aeroplanes on oil, and ships on oil. Everything in transport is oil. So if you don't have oil, you come to a standstill. There are going to be riots. Agriculture today is dependent on oil and fertilizers. Industry, manufacturing, dependent on oil. The whole economy is dependent on oil. And if you don't have the oil, you have to get it from outside. And they can take control of that oil. Notice that they've taken control of oil wherever in the world oil was discovered. Look at history. Look back at history these last 100 years and ask yourself, why have they made sure that they've taken control of oil wherever in the world oil existed? It's only a matter of time for Chavez. It's only a matter of time for Evo Morales in Bolivia, Chavez in Venezuela, because they want control of the oil. Why? The answer is when they have total control of the oil, and they bring down the world of paper money, and they bring down the economy and runaway inflation, prices rising, cost of living increasing, poverty increasing, that's the time you won't be able to afford to buy the oil. And if you don't buy the oil, there's going to be riots in your country. Watch it, Pakistan. How do you get the oil? Answer, you got to bow down and worship Dajjal, meaning you got to submit to Israel. That is why he said, don't touch the oil. So I agree with that question about the likelihood of the Straits of Hormuz being closed and rising prices of oil and so on in consequence of an attack on Iran. Yes, next question. It is the Quran to which you must now all turn. The Quran is not just a book whose pages you turn and you recite. The Quran is the word of Allah. And the word of Allah is a divine attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The word of Allah is a divine attribute, the kalam of Allah. You must love the Quran. You must love the Quran. You must constantly recite the Quran. If you cannot recite the Quran in Arabic, stop what you're doing and go and learn to recite the Quran in Arabic. You should try to recite the Quran every day. And the best time to recite the Quran is at the time of Fajr, before the Salat or after the Salat. You must recite the Quran cover to cover, cover to cover, even if you don't understand what you're reciting. Understanding will come later. And when you have started to recite the Quran, you must also study the Quran. There's a methodology for studying the Quran, and I've explained that methodology several times in my lectures. The Quran is Noor, and you will not be able to see unless Allah puts Noor in your heart. And the major vehicle through which Noor will come to you is through the Quran. And Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam is the teacher of the Quran. And so it is to him you must go, that he may teach you the Quran. But you must love the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And loving the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam is loving his sunnah. It is not love for the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam that you should adopt a cosmetic version of Islam. I spoke previously about Protestant Islam. I'm now speaking about cosmetic Islam, part-time Islam. That you take part of the Sunnah and you abandon the other part. No, you must adopt the whole Sunnah. And the whole Sunnah involves at its very heart resisting oppression in the world. There's more oppression in the world today than ever before, and oppression is constantly increasing. So love the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam and follow his Sunnah. And through the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam you'll get Noor. Without Noor you cannot see. And finally there's Salat. Salat is Noor. And it is in Salat that you can make Mi'raj. It is on Salat that you can travel. Travel beyond this world to worlds that exist beyond, to the Samawat. And partake, not to partake really, but to penetrate and to experience reality beyond material reality. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may bless you in that effort. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah.
إلهي لست للفردوس أعلى ولا أقوى على نار الجحيم الله فهب لي التوبة واغفر ذنوبي فإنك غافر الذنب العظيم إلهي لست للفردوس أعلى ولا أقوى على نار الجحيم الله فهب لي توبة واغفر ذنوبي فإنك غافر الذنب العظيم Tuhanku, aku tidak layak untuk syurgamu, tetapi aku tidak pula sanggup menanggung siksa nerakamu. Dari itu kurniakanlah ampunan kepadaku, ampunkanlah dosaku. Sesungguhnya Engkaulah pengampun dosa-dosa besar. Tuhanku, aku tidak layak untuk syurgamu, tetapi aku tidak pula sanggup menanggung siksa nerakamu. Dari itu kurniakanlah ampunan kepadaku, ampunkanlah dosaku. Sesungguhnya Engkaulah pengampun dosa-dosa besar. Ilahi lastu lil firdausi